the Wednesday in Holy Week, based on Luke chapter 23, verses 2 to 25. They began to accuse him. "We found this fellow," they said, "deceiving our nation. He was forbidding people to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he is the Messiah, a king." So Pilate asked Jesus, "You are the king of the Jews?" "You said it," replied Jesus. "I find no fault in this man," said Pilate to the chief priests and the crowd. But they became insistent. "He's stirring up the people," they said, "teaching them throughout the whole of Judea. He began in Galilee, and now he's come here." When Pilate heard that, he asked if the man was indeed a Galilean. When he learned that he was from Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who happened also to be in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was delighted. He had been wanting to see him for quite some time now, since he'd heard about him, and hoped to see him perform some sign or other. He questioned him this way and that, but Jesus gave no answer at all. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, accusing him vehemently. Herod and his soldiers treated Jesus with contempt. They ridiculed him by dressing him up in a splendid robe and sent him back to Pilate. And so it happened, that very day, that Herod and Pilate became friends with each other. Up until then, they had been enemies. So Pilate called the chief priests, the rulers, and the people. "You brought this man before me," he said to them, "on the grounds that he was leading the people astray. Look here, then, I examined him in your presence, and I found no evidence in him of the charges you're bringing against him. Nor did Herod. He sent him back to me. Look, there is no sign that he's done anything to deserve death. So I'm going to flog him and let him go." "Take him away," they shouted out all together. "Release Barabbas for us." Barabbas had been thrown into prison because of an uprising that had taken place in the city and for murder. Pilate spoke to them again, with the intention of letting Jesus go, but they shouted back, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" "Why?" he said for the third time. "What's he done wrong? I can't find anything he's done that deserves death, so I'm going to beat him and let him go." But they went on shouting out at the tops of their voices, demanding that he be crucified, and eventually their shouts won the day. Pilate gave his verdict that their request should be granted. He released the man they asked for, the one who'd been thrown into prison because of rebellion and murder, and gave Jesus over to their demands. We met Herod a long time ago. Or rather, we didn't meet him. We simply heard that he was out for Jesus' blood. Herod was the king of the Jews. Not a very impressive one, granted, but he'd inherited that title from his father, Herod the Great, famous for lots of building projects and for killing little babies in case one of them might be the Messiah. Now the son, Herod Antipas, has been hearing rumors about Jesus for quite some time, including news that he is a prophet who can do miracles. So here's his chance. The rock musical Jesus Christ Superstar gives Herod some memorable lines, inviting Jesus to do a few tricks. Walk across his swimming pool, change some water into wine that will demonstrate his power. That catches the mood exactly. Jesus is, for Herod, a kind of freak show, a would-be Messiah, but really just an oddball, and a bit of a nuisance. So when Jesus won't cooperate with his fantasies, he does what you do to a mad Messiah. Dress him up as a king, have a good laugh, then send him off to the fate he obviously deserves. That day, Luke remarks, Herod and Pilate became friends. The king of the Jews has become the friend of the Roman Empire. This is a good move politically, but a bad move theologically. God's kingdom is about to be established, and it will stand over against Caesar and all his allies. Pilate, meanwhile, is out of his depth and completely confused. He doesn't understand the finer points of Jewish expectations and hopes. All he knows is that this man is accused of being a troublemaker, but gives no sign that he is anything but sad and deluded. As we watch Jesus being brought in to the Roman governor, lonely and unprotected, after a sleepless night and rough treatment at the hands of his guards, we are bound to understand Pilate's question as deeply sarcastic. So, king of the Jews, are we? And he's thinking anything less kingly it would be hard to imagine. "You've said it," replies Jesus. "Yes, in other words, I know you don't believe it for a moment, and I can't blame you really, because the only sort of kings you know don't look like this and don't behave like me, but it's true nonetheless." Pilate is convinced Jesus is a harmless lunatic, but the crowds think otherwise. "Remember what he did in the temple. He's a troublemaker. We want him dealt with." Finally, Pilate caves in. But Luke, inviting us to share the story, wants us to know that through all these misunderstandings and blunderings, God's purpose was going forward. This was, indeed, how God's kingdom was to come. Today, we may sometimes forget how difficult life can be for those who hold great power and authority. Sometimes they are forced to decide between what's right and what will be popular. Picture in your mind those who know in our nation and elsewhere who have that kind of responsibility. Try to look on them as Jesus looks on them and pray for them in all that they do.